Hello, I'm Josh Stanish. I'm here at the Federation of Fly Fishers in Livingston, Montana. And today we're going to tie you up a little attractor pattern. Really kind of imitates a spruce moth, which is a terrestrial insect that's been around Montana here the last couple of years. It's not something we see all the time, but when we have years with not too much water, these moths come out of any area that has a bunch of spruce trees, and it's been a great pattern because once they hit the water, they don't leave the water, and the fish really kind of key in on them. It's been a great fly on the Upper Madison, up around Lions Bridge. Anytime you have some spruce trees on the Yellowstone right by Livingston, and also the Gallatin, which is just completely full of spruce trees. So we're going to start off. It's called the Ugg Bug. I tie this fly in a lot of different colors, but this one specifically is tied for the spruce moth. So this is my Ugg Bug spruce moth pattern. So we're going to start with the number 10 hook. It's just a standard dry fly hook. I happen to be using a Dairiki 300 on this one. I tie this primarily in 10s and 12s, and it floats real well. It's easy to see. The key to this is you got to make a real broad wing profile because those moths have a pretty wide body to them. So what we're going to start off with is we're going to take a piece of 2mm tan foam here, and we're going to cut a nice strip off. For all my foam work, I went to the sewing store and bought a really nice pair of scissors. It really helps to cut the foam. You can make a nice straight cut with it. What I'm going to do is try and cut a piece here. It runs all the way the length. We want this to be, maybe, I guess that's close to about a 1/4 inch wide. You basically want to have a fairly fat body on this as well. We're going to start off by taking the hook out of the vise, and we're going to pierce the foam right in the center with the hook point and pull this foam on, and then we'll place the hook back in the vise. What we're going to do is we're going to actually tie this foam on the underside here to give us our representation of the body, and cover up that hook shank. So we're going to attach some 140 denier brown UTC thread, and we're going to attach this now right in the middle of the shank here, get our thread on. And then we want to get that thread wrapped back right to before the bend of the hook starts. Now once we've got that, we're going to pull our foam up around the hook shank, and we're going to bring our thread, make a loose wrap right at the back here. Make a loose wrap, a second loose wrap, and then kind of pull it tight. That'll secure that in place there. Then we're going to pull the foam back out of the way, advance our thread forward a little bit, because we want to put a couple segments into this body here. Then I bring the foam back up, another loose wrap. As you come around the second time and up, then you can pull it fairly tight. Pull it out of the way, and then we're going to come right in front again. Advance our thread forward a little bit. Make another segment here. Kind of pinch that foam up around the bottom of the hook. Make one loose wrap. Second one, and then just pull straight up, and that'll kind of secure it in place. Move it all the way forward to the front now. I like to get a couple segments in there. And then we're going to come right up by the eye of the hook here. We're going to do the same thing. A couple loose wraps, then pull straight up on it. Now we'll bring our thread in front, and right on that eye. Let it hang, and then I'm going to pull this foam so it gets a little tension on it. We're going to come in and trim this nice and tight here, hopefully without cutting our thread. Now we'll just wrap up these loose ends right here. And so now we've got the underside covered with foam. I'm going to come back to the back here, and we're just going to cut a nice point in this foam. And then I like to just trim it off flat. So we just have a little taper to it. You want a fairly fat body for this spruce moth pattern. Now we're going to take and cut another piece of foam that's about the same width, maybe even just a tad bit narrower. And what we're going to do is we're going to stick this right off the front here. We're going to leave this whole piece hanging off the front. We're going to wrap over because we're going to eventually pull this over for a bullet head. So we make a couple loose wraps right there. Now we're going to come right back And right on top here, because this is going to end up getting covered up, we're going to bring this thread back to where we had the segment on this as we were advancing it forward. So we want that thread to be right in that segment there, and then we'll wrap right over this. And this is where the rest of our tying is pretty much going to take place. We'll come in and trim off that foam right there. And this gives us a nice bunch of foam right up at the head, so this fly will float really nice and high. Now that we've got that in there, now we're going to take some tan poly yarn. We're going to cut a piece off here, because this is going to help us to make a nice broad wing on this, because those moths, when they hit the water, they're much fatter than like your typical caddis will be. So what we're going to do is take this tan poly yarn, and we're going to split about 1/3 of the yarn out of it, because we don't want, if you use a whole piece of it, it's a little too much. So we're going to get about 1/3 of that material out of it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to lay this wing kind of cockeyed on the side, and we're going to tie it on so that one of them sticks off at a bit of a V angle from our body. Then we'll pull the other one, bring our thread in front, and we'll get it secured so that we kind of have these wings sticking out in kind of a V shape on the top of this. If I pull this off, we get a nice V wing on this. And this is going to give us a nice big broad wing profile to this fly. Plus this poly yarn floats real well as the foam body. So this is one of those flies that kind of no gink required on it, because it's going to float really well no matter what you do and what water you're fishing in. So that's our underwing. Now we're going to attach a second overwing on it, and this is also going to help with visibility a little bit. This is cinnamon colored parapost material. Hairline distributes it. It's great stuff. I like to usually double it over, trim it off. Then I'll go ahead and double it over again and trim that. And then it's usually 3 pieces is what I like to use. So I got 3 even pieces. It helps if you have a little comb, which I forgot to bring. And if you get this, you'll notice that it kind of gets knotted up in a few spots here. And those little knots, you want to try and get those out of there so that you get just a nice fibrous wing here. And so we'll try and get that knot out of there without a little comb. But a little comb, mustache comb, works really great. And you want to try and get all these fibers nice and loose in this stuff. Trim that off. So now you can see all those fibers kind of blended together. And so now we're going to just take this and we're going to tie a nice wing right on top here. We're going to put it right over that wing we already made. And we'll take a couple wraps right here. Get that wing secured. I'll come in and trim these front pieces out of here. So now we have our 2 wings. We have our tan plus that cinnamon color, which is a nice color. It's easy to see. Now we'll just pull all this stuff back together, and we're going to trim it so it's just a little bit longer than where that end of that foam is off that hook. So you get a wing that covers up the whole body. So you want that wing to be a little larger than the rest of the body. So there we have our 2 wings there. One's really good to see it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make a nice little bullet head on this by just pulling this foam back over itself. And we'll take and wrap our thread, and that gives us a nice little bullet head on the front end of this fly. Leave that right there. Then we're going to add some rubber legs that are kind of outriggers. Helps this fly float and land upright. And I'm just using on this, I'm using the centipede legs that are tan and brown barred. These things have been great, and you'll see them on a lot of fly patterns that are out there. So we're going to take a couple of these rubber legs here. Get 2 of them. Need about an inch-long piece here. Now you'll notice that their legs are barred here. And what I like to do is try and line up some of the bars so that they're somewhat uniform when you tie them on. Then I like to take both sets of them, lay them right on the top here. We'll take 1 loose wrap, 2nd loose wrap, kind of start to secure it a little bit. Then you can take these legs and just simply pull them to each side. 1 on this side, 1 on that side. And that'll give you your outriggers. And you can kind of check and make sure that they're sitting right down at least at the level where that wing's at. And then you go ahead and secure them with couple more nice tight wraps of thread. Be a little careful. If you compress too much, you'll notice I did it right back here. If I compress this too much, it'll make your legs flare weird. So don't get them too compressed or you'll have those legs going every which direction. You really want them kind of be in an X pattern right there. Now just to doll this up a little bit, make it look more pretty to the fisherman than to the fish, I'm going to take just a little bit of this hare's ear ice dub in the hare's ear color just to cover up this little collar of brown here and make the whole underbody tan. Because if you look at a spruce moth, they're pretty much kind of a tan color on their underside with kind of an orange and tan speckled wing on it. So we'll just go ahead and we're going to put just a small bit of this dubbing on here, just so that we can cover up this little portion where we've wrapped all that thread. And what I like to do on this fly, and I've started to do this more and more, is I'm starting to use super glue rather than tying a whip finishing knot, especially when you're going to be wrapping your thread into some dubbing. This makes a really nice clean little head. Just come in with your super glue, put a little dab right next to where your dubbing meets your thread. Just get a little bit of super glue on there. Now you're just going to wrap that dubbing around to cover up this little collar. Then you make one wrap of that thread into that dubbing, let it sit there for just a second, and trim your thread off. And then you need no whip finish required on that whatsoever at all. That super glue holds great. And I come in and trim that little tag end up there just to pretty it up. I'll push my rubber legs forward and trim them just slightly in front of the eye, because you want the front set of legs to be a little shorter than your legs in the back. Then the back, I want to trim these back legs just a little shorter than my wing. If these back legs are too long, they'll actually wrap around the hook here, and you'll have to undo them all the time. So if you shorten them up a little bit, they will not tend to wrap around that hook as much. Then you just come in and trim up any stray little fibers here. And there you have my version of a spruce moth and my UGG-bug, which actually stands for utility guide fly. This is a simple little fly. You can tie it in black for ants and beetles, yellow for yellow sallies, olive for caddis. It's been a great fly for me, and everything's kind of the same. You just change up the colors of the foam. So that's the spruce moth version, and give it a shot.